Welcome to Algebra 1B Bootcamp. Today we are studying mean, median, and mode. First thing we are going to talk about is the mean, median, mode, which would be considered to be the measures of center. So, we have an example here about Six Flags. They hire people over the summer. The students' hourly wages are listed below, and we're going to calculate mean, median, and mode. Let's review the definitions kind of as we go. The first one is the mean. Mean is the sum of the data divided by the number of values. It's very commonly referred to as the average. So if I'm going to calculate the mean, I am going to calculate the sum of all of these numbers. So I'm going to pop into my calculator, 1650 plus 8.75 plus 910 plus 825 plus 845 plus 825 plus 925. And you end up with a grand total of 6855. Then you have to divide. You divide by the total numbers that you have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So dividing by 7. Again, this is all calculator work, and you get a big crazy decimal, which is fine. Round to 2 decimal places since we're dealing with dollars and cents. I would have 9.79 or $9.79 for my average. To calculate the median, you're looking for the number that is in the middle of your data set. So it doesn't really matter what numbers you have, I just care about which number lies in the center. So the first thing you want to do is reorder your numbers, putting them usually from least to greatest, which I have done here. And you want to find the number that happens to be in the middle. Since I have 7 numbers, my number in the middle should be what would be the 4th number, which is 875. That would be my median number. Now, perhaps, maybe I only had 6 numbers or an even number of numbers. You might want to make a note that if you have 2 middles or 2 medians, you want to calculate what would be the average of those 2 middles to find the true middle of your data. And then the last one is the mode. The mode is the number that occurs most often. It's usually the easiest one to figure out. You just count. Since I have 2 8.25s, that would be my mode. Now we'll discuss measures of variation, which is slightly different than measures of tendency. But if you know your vocabulary, this should be pretty easy. So the range and spread both kind of talk about the same thing. It really wants to know just how far apart the biggest and the smallest number of your data is. So if I take my salary data here, 1650 is my biggest, and 825 is my smallest. So I'm just going to subtract those two. 1650 minus 8.25 is 8.25. So that would be my range. When calculating quartiles, you're really looking at more middles. The first quartile is the middle of the first half of the data. So if we go back up here and we look, I'm examining this first section. And I want to know where's the middle. Well, if I have 4 numbers, the middle has to be somewhere in there. So I'm going to calculate an average. If I had 5 numbers, I would just pick the number that's in the middle. But so I have to do 8.25 plus 8.45 and then cut that in half to find the true middle. And again, your calculator can do your work for you. It's 8.35. The third quartile is similar, but this time you're looking at the second half of the data. You're starting at the middle or at your median, and you're going to the end. So you're looking at this half. And again, you have 4 numbers. You want the middle of those 4 numbers. You'll calculate the average of 9.10 and 9.25. So you just add them up and divide by 2. And you get 9.175. Again, since we're dealing with dollars and cents, I will say 9.18. We'll deal with more with quartiles when we're talking about box and whisker plots in our next section. And then the interquartile range deals with the quartiles. Just wants to know how far apart are your two quartiles. So you subtract again. And you get 8 point, you subtract those two. Topic number 3, let's talk about what happens when we change our data. So typically what happens is you start off with a specific number or set of data. Let's deal with some simpler numbers. We'll go with the data set of 1, 2, 5, and 9. Okay? You're going to be asked what happens when you add in a number. So if I add in any number in here, it might not affect the mode. It only affects the mode if the most frequent number changes. So if I add in a 7, that's not going to make a difference. But if I add in a 5, the mode has now changed. The same or similar is the range. If I add in the number 7 into this data set, the range is not going to change. The range is still going to be 8. This only is affected if the biggest or smallest number changes. So if I add in a 3, the range is not going to change. If I add in a 12, that's going to change my range. It would change my range to be from 1 to 12, which would be 11 whole units. If we're talking mean and median, things get a little bit more tricky. Let's examine the mean more closely. If I add in, let's say, the number, well, first, let's calculate the current average. So if I add them all up and divide by 4, because there's 4 numbers, my mean is currently 4.25. So let's say I change my data set, and now I have 1, 2, 3, 5, and 9. If I calculate that average, so I add up 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 9, and now I divide by 5 because there's 5 numbers, my average is 4. If I were, instead of adding in a 3, if I add in a number bigger than the average, so 1, 2, 5, 6, and 9, and calculate that, and divide that by 5, because I now have 5 numbers, my average is now 4.6. So if you notice, when I add in a number that's bigger than the mean, my mean gets bigger. If I add in a number smaller than the mean, then my mean gets smaller. The biggest and the smallest really depends on how far away the number you're adding in is from the mean. So it might barely affect it, or it might affect it a whole lot. It just really depends. Now, if we think about the median for a second, currently the median of this would be somewhere in between 2 and 5. So I have to calculate that average, 2 plus 5, then divide that by 2. So my median is currently at 3.5. This is also dependent on where the number lies in the data set. So if I add in a 4, my median is now changing. My median is 4, because now I have 5 numbers. If I were to add in a 3, my median now switches to 3 because I have 5 numbers. If I add in the number 10, oops, 3 wasn't there, sorry. 1, 2, 5, 9, and 10. Now my median is 5. So similar to how the mean worked, if you add in a number larger than the mean is going to get bigger. And if you add in a number smaller than the mean will get smaller. But a lot of times it depends on your data. Because if you add in a number that's the same as your mean in this case, so if I say 1, 2, 3.5, 5, and 9, well, my mean's going to stay the same because it's the same number. So it really just depends on your data. A lot of times you might have to go back and recalculate your averages or your means. Make sure you've taken good notes and show me your notes and I will give you your worksheet.